The reality in consumer packaged goods is about 85 to 90% of these products fail, right? Meaning, and this is a pretty low hurdle to clear, meaning 2 years after they launch, you can't find most of this stuff, right? And that's been persistent for quite a long time. And so this is one of the questions that Bob and Clay and I have been wrestling with for a long, long time, right? Is this just sort of an immutable law of nature? You know, it's just the way it is? You know, or is there a better way to do this, right? What's exciting about the research that we've done and continue to do is we look at, and we do this around the world. I'm going to talk about U.S. Launches, but we look at all the stuff that gets pumped out into the U.S. marketplace. We've looked at over 20,000 different initiatives launched. It's everything that gets launched in the U.S. Over the last 6 years. And we apply a bunch of criteria to these things because we want to identify what we call our breakthrough winners. But what's important here isn't the criteria we use or these 74 winners. What's really important is that the data that we're able to collect and the stories that we tell, it gives us something that's almost unprecedented in innovation research, which is we're not simply telling the stories of those characteristics that are shared, right, the correlations across winners. We've got lots of data because the work we got lots of data on failures, right? So we're actually able to isolate those causal drivers that explain and predict innovation success. And the causal mechanism of successful innovation is the job to be done. Let me show you something. These are, think about this, 3,500, right? 3,500 new items launched into the U.S. CPG category. These are like the 14 top performers. Right? Cat food, beer, sliced cheese, laundry detergent. Wouldn't you think that like these most successful products, you could at least say, oh yeah, I get it, right? You know, I don't necessarily buy them all, but I can see why they're successful. And it really begs the question, right? It really begs the question. If you just throw stuff out, is this just like, you know, kind of the way it goes, something's got to bubble to the top? Is it really just random? Right? Is this just random, or is there something that we can't see, right, that actually is the connective tissue that links these products together? Every single one of those new offerings, right, they resolve a circumstance of struggle, right, Bob's word, and they fulfill unmet aspirations in consumers' lives. When it comes to doing the innovation work, what is it that most companies kind of put at the center? Where do they start their innovation work? You know, often they start it with their own products, or they start it with some persona or demographic target. The interesting thing that Bob showed us through his interview where successful innovations actually start. Right? What Bob showed us is that the essential unit of analysis in successful innovation work is a circumstance. Right? And what I promise you, and I'll show you this, when you make, and when my clients make the circumstance the essential unit of their innovation work, the implications are transformational, in many ways not at all natural. Because when you make the circumstance the essential unit of your innovation work, a couple of magical and powerful things happen. Bob mentioned one of these. One of the things that you realize is that products actually can be much more constructively thought of as services. Right? Because the reality is that customers are going through their daily lives and they hire this brand and pull it into their lives to perform a job that they have to be done. And when we as marketers and developers think of our products actually as services, we get much closer to the way that consumers actually experience our products in their lives. Something else happens, and this is a big deal. Inescapably, we have to acknowledge that the circumstance exists way before we show up with our product, right? As much as we think that we're like breaking trail and creating entirely new whatever it may be, the circumstance exists. And what that means What that means is that in order for a customer to hire our product, something has to get fired. That could be one of three things. That could be another product. It could be a bundle of products they kind of cobble together to stitch it together a solution. Or it could be some non-consuming compensating behavior, and that's great. When you're competing against non-consumption, that's where a lot of the good stuff comes from. But the point is, and this is something I really push on our clients, most marketers launch products into the market without knowing what's getting fired. You got to know the answer to that question. You have to have the answer to the second question, too, which is, what are the criteria? And as Bob said, it's the criteria in that circumstance. It's not some abstract, oh, I care about low fat or low calorie, because you know what? When the fella's buying the cheese for his party on the weekend, when he's having friends over, do you think he cares about the fat and the calories? Not at all. The criteria are circumstance specific. You have to know what are the trade-offs, as Bob was showing us, in that moment. Right? All of this comes out of an understanding of that circumstance of struggle and applying and making, the circumstance the essential unit of the innovation work. And a third thing happens when you can see that movie, as Bob was revealing it. The job spec or the innovation spec gets super clear, right? You really can understand which dimensions of benefit are actually valuable in this job and what's either extraneous or actually a negative. And I'll show you an example of this right here. And this is actually a great, I use this in workshops all the time where I ask executive teams to capture the circumstance without sticking their product in it throughout, right? This is real copy from a launch of one of last year's breakthrough winners, International Delight Iced Coffee, which is like created an entire new category, very exciting in the supermarket. But what these guys found is that making iced coffee at home, anybody ever tried to do that? Gargantuan pain in the neck. You mean I got to remember to make the coffee last night so that it can get cold in the morning? You got to be kidding me, right? And then even if I remember how to do that, I got to get like this whole chemistry lab thing going where I've got the coffee, the ice, the glass, the cream, the syrup, the flavor. I don't have time for this. I make a mess. My wife's going crazy, right? People like going to the coffee shop if they want to go to the coffee shop. 70% of coffee still gets drunk at home. And if I want iced coffee at home, I'm in a world of trouble. I either can do this, homespun disaster, or I might go down to the coffee shop, even though I don't want to go in the coffee shop. And I'm standing in line. It's expensive, and I got to take this home anyhow. Half the time I go, I'll get down the street, and then I realize I got the wrong cup. They're calling me names here. And just the other day I was there, and I was going out, and someone opened the door, and it slammed. I was wearing the coffee all over me. This is all real stuff that they uncovered by going in and spending time with consumers and customers in their lives in this circumstance of just wanting a darn iced coffee, right? And it gave them essentially, not only to give them their very compelling job spec for the innovation, but it gave them the creative for their launch campaign, right? Coffee House Fail. And it gave them this very tight, galvanizing focus, which is, let's create a product that delivers all of the coffee house taste without the coffee house hassle. And I want to show one other feature of this, which is this idea of how understanding the job gives you a really precise job spec in terms of what you're solving for. Isn't it weird? This is coffee, right? People care about their coffee brands, right? I mean, people are like fanatical. I remember doing some work with Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks where they sent Dunkin' people to Starbucks and the Starbucks people to Dunkin'. That was like a holy war, right? You don't do that. The Dunkin' people, one of these verbatims was of a Dunkin' customer who was forced to go to Starbucks. They said, I feel like every time I go in there, I'm having Christmas with a bunch of strangers. But you don't mess with people's coffee, right? Right? It is kind of like that, isn't it? Coffee. So the assumption of these white wave executives going into this is, okay, if we're going to go after this iced coffee thing, we got to go partner with a coffee brand, right? Because people are fanatic. What they found out in hot coffee, the brand really matters. Hot coffee, people care about the coffee. Iced coffee, are adult milkshakes. Nobody gives a hooey about the coffee, right? It's all about all the stuff you put in. And so these white wave guys are like, oh my gosh, flag off this JV partnership initiative. We already own the #2 creamery and flavors brand in the country called International Delight. Instead of going down this wrong road that actually just would have screwed up the initiative of trying to partner with a coffee brand, they brand this thing under a flavor brand, International Delight Iced Coffee, and no consumer experiences that as weird. But it's amazing what happens, right, when you've got a job-driven insight and a clear job spec at the center of an innovation initiative. The journey to success gets much, much clearer. But the key point, right, if you get this part right, the part that Bob was talking about right, if you get the job right, the odds of success are infinitely greater than if you go wandering off into some other direction. I can't tell you how many times when I'm talking to clients who've done it right, who've had a clear job at the center of their innovation efforts, they say, gosh, it was so much easier. I can't tell you all the meetings that we didn't have to have, debating how to solve for something that no one really even knew what we were doing to begin with, right? They're able to go so much faster, right? So much less expensively, so much less risk. It's the basic principle that job-based innovation is lean innovation, right? These are the principles of lean applied to innovation. Because why? Because they systematically engineer out time, waste, defects, risk.